Our next hymn is 629. It is new to us. I'm really excited about it because it's absolutely beautiful. When I was learning it this week, the composer, Jim Krogert, had a video on YouTube where he was talking about the piece and explaining it. And I thought what he talked about was really pretty. So he talked about how he wrote this at a time in his life that was really dark. And he was outside walking around really late at night. And he ended up by a river, and he was talking about deciding to leave his life at that point in God's hands. But he wrote this as a reflection for times in the Bible where people would build altars by water sources. They talk about it a lot in the Old Testament as a way of marking a place that was significant with a time with God. So this piece is supposed to reflect that. Since it's new to us, I'm going to sing the verse and the refrain through one time, and then you can join me. We're going to do it twice in a row. So I'll do first verse and refrain, and then you guys will also do the first verse and refrain, and then the second one. But I'll just sing it through once because it's not super regular and it gives you a chance to learn the melody. Soft field of clover, moon shining over the valley, joining the song of the river, to the great giver of the great good. As it enfolds me, somehow it holds me together. I realize I've been singing, still it comes ringing clearer than clear. And here by the water, I'll build an altar to praise you. Out of the stones that I found here, I'll set them down here, rough as they are, knowing you can make them holy, knowing you can make them holy, knowing you can make them holy. Soft field of clover, moon shining over the valley, joining the song of the river, to the great giver of the great good. As it enfolds me, somehow it holds me together. I down here, rough as they are, knowing you can make them holy, knowing you can make them holy, knowing you can make them holy.
Joshua 3:14 to 4:9. This is an interesting story. The people marched out from their tents to cross over the Jordan. The priests carrying the covenant chest were in front of the people. When the priests who were carrying the chest came to the Jordan, their feet touched the edge of the water. Jordan had overflowed its banks completely, the way it does the entire harvest season. But at that moment, the water of the Jordan coming downstream stood still. It rose up as a single heap very far off, just below Adam, which is a city next to Zarethan. The water going down to the desert sea, that is the Dead Sea, was cut off completely. The people crossed opposite Jericho. So the priests carrying the Lord's covenant stood firmly on dry land in the middle of the Jordan. Meanwhile, all Israel crossed over the dry land until the entire nation finished crossing over the Jordan. When the entire nation had finished crossing over the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Pick 12 men from the people, 1 man per tribe. Command them, pick up 12 stones from right here in the middle of the Jordan, where the feet of the priests have come firmly planted. Bring them across with you and put them down in the camp where you are staying tonight." Joshua called for the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, 1 man per tribe. Joshua said to them, "Cross over into the middle of the Jordan, up to the Lord your God's chest. Each of you lift up a stone on his shoulder to match the number of the tribes of the Israelites. This will be a symbol among you. In the future, your children may ask, 'What do these stones mean to you?' Then you will tell them that the water of the Jordan was cut off before the Lord's covenant chest. When it crossed over the Jordan, the water of the Jordan was cut off. These stones will be an enduring memorial for the Israelites." The Israelites did exactly what Joshua ordered. They lifted 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, matching the number of the tribes of the Israelites, exactly as the Lord had said to Joshua. They brought them over to the camp and put them down there. Joshua also set up 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan, where the feet of the priests had stood while carrying the covenant chest. They are still there today.
Buenos días. Bonjour. Namaste. Bote. And if we otherwise missed your native tongue, good morning. About a decade ago, a joint group of researchers from Lisbon, Portugal, and Durham, United Kingdom, published a study tracing folk tales as far back in time as possible, using a statistical model used in biological searches to trace lineages. Now, they had a rich trove of data to work with because of the many folklore collectors in the 17 and 1800s who traveled around writing down people's stories that had only been passed on by word of mouth before that, like the Grimm brothers' famous collection of stories. But the Grimms felt at that time that these stories they were collecting from grannies and plowmen and every other day folk were much older. And the 2015 researchers agreed. What De Silva and Tirani found in their study was that they could identify several stories that likely had been around not just for hundreds of years, but for thousands of years. The stories that we know today as Beauty and the Beast and Rumpelstiltskin have likely been around for 4,000 years. Jack and the Beanstalk, a boy stealing a monster's treasure, has largely existed in some form for 5,000 years. But De Silva and Tirani found a statistical likelihood that they had a story 6,000 years old, The Smith and the Devil. If you know the story of Faust and his bargain, or even Robert Johnson selling his soul to the devil to play the blues, it's that story. Outsmarting some evil creature to get what you want. 6,000 years ago was the Bronze Age. Metallurgy was new tech. This story would likely have been told in Proto-Indo-European, the common language of the basis of every language from English to Hindi. Not every language, but pretty much Europe, Middle East to India. And likely the people who spoke that language told that story as they spread all over Europe, the Middle East, and India. Not every story has the staying power from the Bronze Age, but stories, the concept of storytelling, it's powerful, it's enduring. There are stories that we have been telling each other for a very long time, and these stories aren't just for entertainment. They form our identities, and they hold us accountable to our values. They help us process our emotions. They help us to remember our deep paths and connect us with our ancestors, and they help us make meaning. This year, in the Easter season between now and Pentecost, we'll be sharing our own stories. We'll be hearing not just from Pastor Ndunge and I as usual, but from several people in the congregation. Times are hard right now, but this isn't the first time that we've been through hard things. So we are going to remind each other that we have the ability to get through this. We've been through hard things before, and we can do it again. By sharing the stories of how we got through, we're going to help build each other's resilience. I wanted to start off this series of storytelling with the story of the people of Israel crossing over the Jordan River into the Promised Land. Joshua can be a hard book to make sense of, with its stories of conquest and even some themes of genocide, and I want to acknowledge, particularly in this era of invading military powers, taking God's name in vain, and claiming God sanctions the death they bring. Even if that element is not in the story today, it may be in the background for you, and we can talk about that sometime. But why I picked this story is for its many layers of memory. Some explicit, like Joshua telling the representatives from each of the 12 tribes to build a memorial so that when their kids and grandkids ask, "Why are these stones here?" they can answer them with that story of how God made a way across the Jordan River, even at flood stage in the rainy harvest season, so that the Israelites could walk across on dry ground. And there's some implicit layers too, like that twice repeated reference to dry ground, which comes from when Moses parted the Red Sea, if the whole parting of the waters thing wasn't enough of a clue for you. Israel left Egypt and walked to freedom on dry ground. Now, bookending their long wandering in the desert is another watery miracle, allowing them to enter Canaan, the promised land. So when Joshua tells his people to tell the story, he's not just alluding to the crossing of the Jordan, he's calling to mind the whole long story of liberation from Egypt. Like if you give a mouse a cookie, one story recalls another until the whole thing comes out. Look what God brought us through. Look how God heard our cries in slavery in Egypt and brought us out by impossible means. And then kept us safe and fed in the desert for 40 years before making a way for us to enter this land full of abundance. Even if there are still major challenges ahead of them as they claim their promised land, maybe especially because there are major challenges ahead of them, asking them to remember is almost an exercise in resilience, saying, we trusted God to bring us this far, remember? We can trust God to take us the next step of the way. But there's another layer of memory that I want to call your attention to as well. The clue is right at the end of the passage today in verse 9. Joshua also set up 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan, where the feet of the priests had stood while carrying the covenant chest. And they are still there today. You don't have to say still today if you're writing the camp logbook. This story of crossing the Jordan, the whole narrative of the book of Joshua, in fact, wasn't written on the spot as it happened. The narrator here shows us that a good bit of time has passed. You don't marvel at a monument made of rocks that's endured 5, 10, or even 20 years. You marvel that it's lasted centuries. Many Bible scholars think that the historical books of Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings were written down in the era of King Josiah, some 700 or 800 years after the stories in Joshua. Now, like Jack and the Beanstalk, that doesn't mean that these stories didn't exist orally. Indeed, Joshua tells people to tell the stories to their children, and evidently they did. But they likely weren't written until nearly the end of the Jewish monarchies. To remind you, Josiah was one of the last kings of Judah. I bring this up because this story of Joshua and the river and the memorial stones is a story being told in its written form to a people staring down their own challenges. For the audience of the written book of Joshua, the threat is Babylon, a powerful new empire hungrily eyeing them. The northern kingdom of Israel has already fallen to Assyria, and its people have been taken captive in Josiah's time. And now the new world power, Babylon, is looking to expand and make Judah a vassal state. And maybe the people of Judah will be taken captive too. And they're left trying to make sense of where God is in the midst of that significant and unwelcome change. As their land is about to be taken away from them, and they read the story of Joshua telling his people to remember crossing the Jordan, they're also hearing not just the story of the crossing of the Red Sea, but even further back to the promised land God made to Abram and Ur in Babylon, that Abram would have many descendants and that he would one day have a land. Generations later, God finally fulfilled that promise under Joshua and gave them land as they understood it. And then the story of how they lived in that land, failing to live up to their ideals that they'd set for themselves and that God had set for them. They came from a people without land. Then God gifted them land. And now they might be a people without land again. And maybe, just maybe, if they made it through everything up to this point and God was with them through all those ups and downs, maybe God will be with them even as this latest disaster looms. I know we face a lot of challenges today. The threat of conquest and genocide still looms large. The world feels unstable ecologically, technologically, politically. It can be overwhelming. And knowing how to respond to the challenges can seem insurmountable. I've preached before of just pick one thing as a means of trying to combat nihilism or despair, or however you want to name the emotion. By focusing on helping the world in one concrete area. Well, I needed my own advice, and I've been doubling down on visiting incarcerated migrants in Clay County and now Miami's migrant detention centers with Indiana Aid. Bob Walson initiated me into that work. I sat down with him last March to hear about his experience after he talked about it in sharing time. And his stories motivated me to do something. My hope was that in helping others, I would feel a little less despair and powerlessness about our increasingly terrible immigration enforcement. It hasn't exactly made me feel better, but I do have a story to tell you, to maybe pass along some hope. I went to Clay County a couple of weeks ago, and I met a young man from Haiti. His head wrapped in a blanket to ward off a chill that I didn't feel. His Spanish so soft-spoken it was difficult to hear him. Let's call him Yves. In a crowded room, he pleaded for my attention with his presence and his eyes. He told me that he needed $7,500 by Monday, 2 days away, in order to post bail in time for his hearing in immigration court, which would be held if he was there or not. And if he was not there, he would definitely be deported. He had family members that depended on him for income, he said. Please help, call his cousin. Anything I could give or collect would be a help. I felt pretty hopeless, but I told him I would help. As we were leaving, I passed along Eve's information to Judy, and she made the call to his cousin. Judy knew of a program that could get Eves the money for bail. If only we had known sooner, though, she said, because these offices were sure to be closed for the weekend, and it seemed like a small chance that the paperwork could be processed by Monday morning. And then Judy called me back to tell me she'd talked with Eve's cousin and that he had already filled out that very paperwork, and unbeknownst to Eves, it had already been processed. And he would be released and picked up on Monday in time for his hearing. And then I got another call a few days later from Judy saying that Eves was safely home. What a wild swing from, I have no idea how this can possibly work out for good, to, it's already been done. I can't take credit for what happened with Eves, but I feel so privileged to have been a part of it as a conduit of information, as a caring presence for Eves in a really stressful time. I hope that I was a source of hope for him, because his story is certainly a sign of hope for me. And I lift this story to you all this morning as the first stone in our monument of stories this Easter season. Things are hard, but God is working even now. There is hope. People of goodwill and compassion are working together, and with all the challenges we face, some are still finding liberation. I can't see into the future to know that everything will turn out right, any more than Joshua's followers could after crossing the Jordan, or than Josiah's subjects could after reading about Joshua while they worried about Babylon. But all of us can look back. We can look back to the stories that formed us, to the stories of our peoples, to see how they survived, how they made meaning, how God was with them in their struggles. We can tell each other our stories of how we survived and learned and grew from our past challenges, and maybe those collected stories can develop within us the strength that we need to face the story we live in now. And by God's grace, may how we live now serve as a source of strength to the generations that come after us.
It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frugal. The ones that really mattered.
Don't you remember all those stories?
That's all they were. Stories.
But aren't we forgetting about the miracle of storytelling?
What's a story?
Do these stories convince us of a lie? Or do they resonate with something deep inside us that's profoundly true, that we can't express any other way except storytelling?
Why do we tell stories? To try to make sense of a world that can be terrifying. and enormous.
Well, the stars don't tell the future, Donkey. They tell stories.
And this is a special book. It was the book my father used to read to me when I was sick, and I used to read it to your father. And today, I'm going to read it to you.
Well, I have a story to tell you.
There's so many stories I wish I could tell you, but there's only time for one.
Grand story.
It's my story.
Story.
That's what I'll do. I will tell you a story.
I will tell you one of these tales.
Once upon a time,
in a faraway land. An old tale from way back when.
A story about love. Hope in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't.
There's so many stories where some brave hero decides to give their life to save the day.
They kept going because they were holding on to something.
This is a story about hope.
There's some good in this world, and it's worth fighting. Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something.
A man tells his stories so many times that he becomes the stories.
Not all stories in the end. Just make it a good one, eh?
Maybe you can come over and read it again to me tonight.
Tell me our story.
Could you read it again?
You read this to me, Mommy. Read it again. Read it again. Why don't you read it to me?
Our hymn of response today is number 563, Come Thou Fount, and I'm going to ask you to stand in body or spirit because it's that kind of song.